Hi, I'm Sophie Marie Odom, Lifestyle Magazine's editor.
And I am Samantha Rank, broadcaster and disability rights campaigner. Welcome to Motability Lifestyle Pod. In this podcast, we invite our friends from the disability community into our studio for a conversation about how we can all live our best life. And I think we need a little bit of that in our lives at the moment, don't we? Particularly when we are navigating such a frustrating and complex disabling world.
Today we are joined by Paralympian athlete James Freeman, who represented Britain at the 2020 Tokyo Paralympics. And he juggles racing with working as a diversity and inclusion consultant. He has a thing or two to say about the power of changing your mindset.
And the sun is out, and you know what that means? People are jetting off on holiday. We look at accessibility and travel, and there are reasons to be cheerful here. Plus, our resident car expert, Matt Lismore, will make us wiser about hybrid cars. And then, of course, we will end, which is my personal favourite, with Gadgets. What's on the market?
Hi, Sam.
Hello, lovely Sophie. How have you been?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Apart from being a little bit sweaty derriere, I think my other fellow wheelchair users will absolutely sympathise. When the sun comes out, as a true Brit, I like to complain just as much as when it's raining outside. But being a full-time wheelchair user means that you do get a little bit of a sweaty bottom situation going on. But apart from that, I'm good. I am good. What is new in your world?
I'm good, thank you. Also been very hot and also complaining about the heat, but then complain when it rains as well. Very much looking forward to an upcoming holiday, going to Mexico. 10 hours on a flight though with 2 young kids.
Ouch.
Yes.
I have 2 young cats. Probably not the same. However, I feel your pain because I can only imagine the unpredictability of travelling with children. When you have a disability, you have got to plan for every eventuality.
Talking about travel, have you heard about what's going on with the Rights on Flights campaign?
This has been something that I have been obviously, tracking and keeping abreast of for months and months. A lot of my dear friends are very much forefront of the change and lobbying and really fighting that fight. And it's one of those bittersweet moments because you think, why on earth has it taken so long for this to happen, And I think we have that beautiful motto amongst the disability community, nothing about us without us. And I think one of the reasons why we are so far behind in aviation and innovation is because that's a tongue twister, isn't it? Aviation innovation.
It is.
It's because disabled people have not been brought to the table. We have not been included in the design process. Hopefully now things are changing because for me, as a physically disabled woman who struggles to go anywhere independently, if I'm honest, it really saddens me that I cannot go on a flight independently. I have to always be with somebody. And I feel actually quite liberated that the tide is turning for the good. So yeah, absolutely embrace it. A little bit sad that it's taken so long.
Yeah, it's from what I was reading as well. The planned reforms mean that the civil aviation authorities to be able to issue financial penalties to airlines who fail to meet their obligations to disabled travellers. So that means that there'll no longer be a cap on compensation for wheelchairs or mobility aids that are damaged on domestic UK flights, and they're working towards international flights as well.
Amazing.
So because I know at the moment there's just sort of like if a wheelchair gets broken on a flight, there's no come back from that. They can just sort of be like, okay, well, what can we do? And there's nothing that's done. So that's really good to hear. Have you got any travels this summer?
Alas, no. I have not been on holiday for maybe 4 years, and that is mostly because finding somebody to go on holiday with. When you get to my age and you're single and you're a cat lady and even your gay friends have taken off, how dare you? It's quite difficult to find people to go on holiday with. That's quite a violin moment there, isn't there? Should we get one into the studio? But I'm actually renovating a bungalow at the moment. So that's got to be my main focus. And I think once I'm settled, I will be a girl about town and I'll be flying here, there and everywhere. I have a question for you. Are you a beach person, a city dweller, Or one of those really annoying people that climbs mountains and pretends that's a holiday when everyone knows it really isn't.
Definitely not a holiday. 100% beach. I'm a beach bum. I love just relaxing on the beach. What about you?
No, because you just get sand everywhere. Like literally washing sand out of all your nooks and crannies. Don't tell me it doesn't happen to you, because when you're on a beach holiday, you've literally showered and then the next day it's like, where is this sand coming from? It's just never ending. On a serious note, apart from the annoying sand, being in a wheelchair on a beach, nightmare. I think you have to kind of be dragged backwards, and it feels very much Indiana Jones being sucked into, quicksand. And then if you need a toilet, I have been known to dig a little hole in the sand, because getting you back off the beach is another fiasco. So no, I'm very much a city dweller, I think. I think that's my preferred way to vacate.
But I have some news, Sam, that might change your mind.
I am all ears.
There's been some news recently announced that there's a new initiative to make 287 beaches in Greece totally accessible. So they're hoping that 220 beaches will be ready by the summer by installing something called a seat track system, which is a fixed track mechanism involving a remote control operated chair that can be moved in and out of the sea.
I love it.
Yes, you can go and enjoy the beach.
With my pina colada.
Yes, exactly. Of course. And also, it goes beyond Greece. They're hoping to have installed these mechanisms across Italy, Cyprus, Latvia, and later across Croatia, Spain, UK, UAE, USA, and Turkey, all this year.
I think the question is, however, which will sway me, will I still get 2 cabana boys feeding me grapes and making sure I don't get overheated? If that's part of the package, then I am all for it. Does it say that in the little article?
It doesn't,
there?
but I can do some more research for you.
Can you get on the phone to Greece and be like, yeah?
I'll try.
Perfect.
Okay, so now it's time to introduce our guest. I'm very pleased to say we are now joined by the wonderful James Freeman. James is a professional athlete. He is currently 3rd in the world for the 100-metre wheelchair racing and the European record holder for the 800 metres. He also works as a diversity and inclusion expert.
Now, before I welcome our next amazing guest, you may have noticed that the sound might be a little bit different, but all will become very, very clear. Do not worry, just go with it. Close your eyes and meditate and listen to our wonderful next guest. James, a huge welcome to Motability Lifestyle Pod. What an absolute delight it is to have you. Now, we very nearly didn't have you, but before we talk a little bit more about that, I have to say, I'm always rather fascinated when I get to talk to a real life Paralympian, because in 2012, when, of course, we know that was very much a turning point for the Paralympics.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the Paralympics were going for quite some time, but I think, Channel 4 really invested in the superhuman advertisement. And it was for the first time, I would say, that, non-disabled people were taking notice of the Paralympics. And it was so phenomenally popular. Now, that was the same year I actually moved from quaint little rural Leyland in Lancashire, give it up for the Leyland Massive, and I moved to the Big Smoke. And every single time that I went out independently and I got into a black cab, so an accessible cab, without fail, James, the taxi driver, and I can't do a Cockney accent, so just bear with me. They went, "Are you one of them Paralympians?" And I would always reply, if you call drinking copious amounts of alcohol a Paralympic sport, then yes. And it became a little bit of a running joke. But we can all really sympathise with that, because actually society pigeonholes disabled people into 2 categories. You are either this object of inspiration, a Paralympian, or you're kind of not, and you're kind of all the really negative tropes that are perpetuated often by the media, that you're, a bit lazy or you're a benefit scrounger. So I really find it fascinating, like, You must get that as well. Like, are you a Paralympian? And how do you approach that? And what do you say?
I mean, it's quite easy for me now because I can say yes, I am. Um, but I think it goes to your point of, if you are an active, independent person with a disability, everyone assumes that you're a Paralympian. The one question that I get asked a lot, which sort of is starting to grate on me slightly, is, are you going to the next one? Um, did you win a medal? You know, please don't end up like that Oscar Pistorius fella. That's the one I got asked most recently.
Wow.
So there was that. I think to your point though, I think people just, it always comes from a good place. Once you take it as sort of take the emotion out of it and maybe take your sort of pride out of it a little bit, they just want to be more curious about your situation. So to those people who aren't necessarily Paralympians, just say, well, no, I'm not a Paralympian, but I do this, or I am active in this area, or I do other things. Because as you say, like when it comes to inspiration for disability in the media, it's always about sport or someone's, come back from war, a warlike area or been injured or, overcome something. When really, I think I speak for most disabled people when I say we just want to be treated like regular people. And I think for me, it's just about understanding that education piece. And if you're having that conversation with someone, you're educating, you're not coming at them from a place of aggression. So if you come at them with the same sort of energy that you think they're coming at you with, no one's talking. So then no one's really understanding what the other's going through. So I'd say just hold composure, just take a breath and think they don't know any better. So I'm now going to kind of have that conversation to maybe educate them. So if they meet someone else like me, then I can make that experience better for that person.
Mm, absolutely. And you kind of, hit the nail on the head there that, irrespective of who we are, we all have our dreams and we all have aspirations. And some of us want to be Paralympian and some of us are quite happy to be a cat mum and
Sure.
eat a lot of chocolate and watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer on repeat. But I think, take us back because obviously you had the bug. Obviously you had that kind of fire in your belly that said, this is something that I want to do. So let's hear a little bit about, little James or were you little James when you, got on this Paralympian trajectory to stardom?
I think one thing about me is I'm definitely an underdog. Some people come into wheelchair racing and they like immediately get snatched up because like they're prospects. Your Hannah Cockcrofts, your Dave Weirs, your Marcel Hughes. Me, it's been a 13-year journey. I got into racing because of a haircut, would you believe? My mum was looking for me to do something at the age of 14, and 14 is quite a challenging age for everybody. And I was already doing horse riding, and I was like, oh, horse riding is not cool anymore. Full disclosure, horse riding is very cool. I was just a very angsty teenager. A lot of Lincoln Park, a lot of, stuff like that. So I was like, oh, I don't want to do horse riding anymore. My mum was like, okay, but you got to go and find another sport because you can't just stay here and play Xbox all evening. You've got to do something active. My mum's hairdresser knew someone who was wheelchair racing, and this was before 2012. So this is before the big boom of Paralympics. And my mum was like, you're going to go down, you're going to try wheelchair racing. And I went down and, I was the only person in the wheelchair that I really knew like from where I was from. I went down to this track in Kingston, and there was all these older guys they all sat in their wheelchairs. Some of them were driving and they had, houses and relationships and some of them had jobs. It's things that I never really considered like growing up. So, 14-year-old James started there and I still haven't quite left yet. And it certainly has been a journey. I was very blessed because not everyone can do it full time. I had a lot of financial backing from friends and family so that I could do it full time. And then the rest is history.
Tell us more a little bit about the feelings and the energy that goes along with, going to Tokyo, for example. I can only imagine getting that phone call and thinking, gosh, it's actually happening now. But also, just traveling, being in a different environment, being in a space that is unfamiliar, but also having that camaraderie and that solidarity with other, deaf, disabled, and neurodivergent individuals. So walk us through it. What does that actually feel like?
So fun fact, I was the last person to get picked for the team. I'd already gone and competed for GB at the Europeans in Poland, the European athletics meet. And, everyone in the space. So when everyone starts getting selected, like you kind of figure it out quite quickly because they post about it on social media. And like the first round happened, didn't make it. Thought, okay, second round might happen, I might make it. Still didn't make it. At this point, I'm like crying in the shower, like some sort of black and white existential movie, like some sort of Rocky montage is about to happen. And then my dad comes into the bathroom. He's like, first, why crying? Stop crying. No one's told you you're not going yet. No one's told you you're not going to Tokyo. So just wait for someone to tell you you're not going. And I got a phone call from the head of GB at the time, Paula Dunn. And she was like, hi, James, how are you? And I was like, fine. And she was like, because it's either going to go one way or the other way. It's either good news or bad news. And she literally just said, oh, by the way, it's good news. We'll be expecting you in 3 weeks' time. You can tell your coach, but don't tell anyone else. Bye. And then that was it. And then I basically just had a bit of a breakdown because it had been like 13 years, finally achieved the dream of going to a Paralympics. Obviously going to a Paralympics with Hannah and with Dave and all these other Richard Whitehead, bit like going to like the playoff with Michael Jordan. It's a bit like going and playing football with Messi or Ronaldo. It's a bit like, oh wow, I'm going and I'm on the same stage as these people, which is quite incredible, really. Tokyo and Japan in general, I've never seen a country so different from the UK. Everything they do, the whole culture, the way they live, it's just really different to ours.
When you mentioned just there that Japan is different,
Yeah.
is it in terms of how? Can you just elaborate a little bit?
Their culture is all about respect, I think, and they're a really friendly people. It's just incredible. They're like you're very much a guest in their country. I think the real bummer is everyone was like, "Oh, how was Japan?" And I was like, "Well, I saw some of it from a bus, and I got to go around an athletics track, and I got to go around a Paralympic village, and that was fun." But everyone's like, "Oh, did you see like?" The cherry blossom fields. Did you see any of the hot springs? No, I didn't do any of that. People always ask me what was village like. Oh, it's like a hotel, but also like a block of flats. So GB has this like massive building. All the GB athletes stay in there. I think we were behind America, and I think we were just ahead of France. So that might say something for the medal table as well.
I know that during the time, obviously because of COVID restrictions, there were some Paralympians who unfortunately had to leave early because they didn't have the right support in place because it was so strict. And I guess, when you're in a foreign environment where perhaps your needs
Yeah.
aren't being met as they would be back at home, that can be incredibly intimidating. And I know that, through the work that you do as an incredible sports person, you have actually for your own lived experience now gone into the DE&I space, which is absolutely wonderful. So diversity, inclusion, equality, which is absolutely my sphere. Yeah, that's my happy place. Do you think that traveling the world and having all these wonderful opportunities, but equally seeing how disability not only is viewed in other countries, because let's face it, the UK is very much forward thinking when we're looking at diversity across the board. Unfortunately, not everywhere is like that. Is that what prompted you to transfer those skills and, do the work that you do now?
I don't know if it was the main motivator. I'll tell you a story kind of to your point there is we got on the bus when we were in the village, and when you go on the bus to the village, anyone can get on any bus. So when we were in the training camp, it was all GB people on the same bus. When you go to the village, people from different nations, they get on the bus and you get chatting to people. And there was a javelin thrower or some sort of thrower, and he was from, I think he was from Nigeria. And his chair was literally like a hospital chair. It was very much like, the kind of standard ones you get, and like parts of it were falling off. And me and my mate very naively said, well, why don't you just get another chair? And he was like, well, I can't, because we literally found this chair and it's the only chair I've had. It's the only chair that fits me, and we don't have the funding where I'm from. And then that makes you think, oh God, like, yeah, we're so lucky in the UK. The UK definitely has, some growing to do itself, but I think in terms of the stuff I saw, there was one guy I saw, his whole navigation, he was just on a skateboard the whole time. He was missing, let's say, like his legs, and I think we asked him, "Do you have a wheelchair?" No, I have a skateboard. So I think when you go and do these international tournaments and you go and meet athletes from other countries, you really start to understand, like, yes, the UK is not perfect, but compared to a lot of other places, we really do have it quite good. And it really is talked about. You know, we met some people out in Tokyo. The Paralympic coverage just wasn't even covered in their country. Their friends and family had to watch it on a live stream in a different language. Just so they could watch their family member in the Paralympic game. When it comes to kind of why I decided to get into kind of the D&I space, I think, I had already kind of started doing it when I went to university. I was like the disability officer of my university. So you kind of manage everything that goes on in the student union, and like you kind of do things like that. I've always had a passion for making disabled people's lives that little bit easier and better. I come from a background of parents and family and friends that say you can do anything. You shouldn't be restricted by anything. But for a lot of people, that's not the case. I want to portray the message that if I can do it, if I can have a job and I can live on my own, and I can go to Paralympics and I can have a fairly independent life, then anyone can. And I think that that's not something that's portrayed a lot in the media. That's not some kind of when we're speaking about disabled people, we're often used as sympathy pieces. When I was at school, it was very much, oh, we'll try and get James 5 GCSEs, but we don't know. And, he could live at university, but it's going to be really hard and he might not be able to do it. So, like, if he wants to go home, don't shoot him down about it. But my parents very much threw me in the deep end in respect of, give it your best go. If you've tried your best and it's still not enough, then that's fine. Like, at least you did your best, but you're not going to like not try because you have those options available to you. And I think, it just takes somebody, just one person to be like, well, actually, no, you can do these things. This is how I do it. And again, it's about that listening piece. So I meet loads of people in my D&I work that, they might be neurodiverse. I knew nothing about neurodiversity before I started working in the space. Not really. And I've learned so much in the last 2 years. And again, I didn't learn it from pretending or making it out that I knew better or trying to cover up for fear of offending someone. It literally is just as simple as, I don't know what your life is like. Can you just give me a bit of insight into that? Once you get that empathy piece and you kind of build that rapport with a client or someone in the space, then you can have that wider conversation. I think that the trouble is, so many people are so worried about offending someone. Oh, what if I say the wrong thing? What if I do this? What if I do that? Well, I guarantee you the result will be worse if you just assume. The best thing I have is I go to offices and they ask me, James, like, how accessible is this office? Like, what could we be doing better? The best thing you can say to me is, we don't have anything in place. That's why you're here. We're going to be honest with you. We don't have a disabled toilet. We don't have any, braille around the office. We don't have anything in terms of wheelchair access. Because at least you're being honest. The worst one is when they go, oh yeah, we've got everything. We've sorted everything. We could be more inclusive, and then you turn up and then you realize, actually, yeah, you could. And even the most inclusive places, there's always room for growth. So no one is ever going to be 100% right all the time, because disability is such a broad spectrum. What I go through will be different to what someone else goes through in a wheelchair or who has CP. I think that once we have those tougher conversations, we can really move forward that
And
education
your
piece.
optimism is infectious and clearly has got you so much, afforded you so much success. But as we know, life can throw curveballs at you. And I know that Sophie wants to ask you a little bit more about what happened the other day and why we are not in the studio together, alas. But yeah, things don't always go to plan, do they, James?
Yeah, let's be quite blunt with each other here. Having a disability is hard, right? I would never say it's not hard. I have a very good life. I have a very good quality of life. But, would I rather not be disabled? Sure. I'm proud of my disability and I hide it. July is Disability Pride Month and I'm proud of my disability. But, I wouldn't wish this on anybody. It sucks a lot of the time. So I was supposed to come down and do this kind of work at the Haymarket office, ready to go, ordered the cab, all good to go. And I live in a block of flats and you have to take the lift down. I live on the 4th floor. You take a lift down to kind of get to the main foyer so you can leave. And I just got to the foyer. I clicked the button and it opened a bit. I kind of went in a little bit and then someone was like, "Oh no, it's broken. You should leave it. Get out." So I got out and then it just would not open again. It just wouldn't open. So I kind of stuck at the top of the stairs because not only did I miss the appointment, which is something that really frustrated me, but forward thinking, how am I going to get out of my building? What if there's a fire? What if I need to go and get some food or, someone needs me for something else? I could, but you'd be throwing yourself down the stairs and that's often not ideal. But I think for me, I think a lot of disabled people, they get a lot of flack saying "Oh, your needs are too much," or "You're always so tired," or sometimes I think you could be doing better. You're just moaning, but you have to understand that for a lot of disabled people, you have to think of a backup plan to your backup plan to your backup plan. There needs to be forward thinking for everything because there's so many things that are out of our control as disabled people. The amount of times I've wanted to go and meet someone, but I can't because the ramp wasn't working on this bus or the lift wasn't working at this station and I think I would feel better about it if the workers behind all that, especially public transport, were just a bit more honest about it. Like I go to say, Houston station and they're like, "Oh, did you book beforehand?" Now, I did for a lot of them, but begs the question, why do I have to do that? Nobody else has to do that. Why do I have to do that? And I was like, "Well, because we could help you out better if you call up beforehand." Yeah, I understand that. But what if you want to do something spontaneous? I can't say to a friend, "Let's go to Brighton for the day." That's just not going to happen. Nobody else has to do it. And able-bodied people will, I think I've got some great allyship in my corner, my friends, my family. They're great allies and they're really supportive, but they'll never get it. They'll never fully understand. And I think that's where people get defensive is that, or I'm not ableist, I would never say that. No one's saying you are ableist, but you don't know. So instead of assuming, just listen.
How do you
Just
deal with
listen.
those frustrations, James? Like, for example, with what happened on Friday, and like you said, you can't just be spontaneous and go out and meet friends. How do you manage those frustrations? Because you do seem like a very positive person, and obviously in your work as well. And do you practice what you preach?
I think so. Yeah, I think when it comes to my lift breaking, for example, and then my sister came over and she kind of helped me down the stairs, and then we went to the concierge. The important thing is, there's no point getting upset with the workers if a lift breaks down. It's not their fault, right? And I think again, if you go at it from a place of emotion and you're looking for someone to blame and they're the first person available, if you come at it from that aggression, they're gonna respond with that same energy. And then again, nothing gets resolved. But for me, it's the most prominent with visible is that from an early age, you're going to get questioned. So I think from an early age, you kind of learn things. And I'm not going to lie, sometimes I will snap people. If I'm having a bad day, if someone's visibly frustrated, "Oh no, the lift doesn't work." Put yourself in that person's shoes for a while. I've been to many restaurants and bars where people are like, "Oh, we don't have any access." And sometimes you don't want to swallow that. Why don't you have any access? I'll give you one example. Back when I was, in my student days, not so much now, but we went on a bar crawl, me and my friends, and went to this bar and this guy was like, "No, can't come in, there's no access." My friends got very defensive of me. Why can't we just carry him in? He'll be fine with it. And I would be fine with my friends carrying me in, that's different. But the best thing that happened was another bouncer walked over to this bouncer that was getting, kind of questioned and said, "Just carry him in. But what about health and safety?" Yeah, but think about it, just be a bit empathetic. Like, if you were in my position, how would you feel now? You're not going to be pleased about it. I think that empathy piece is really important for me. And I think that just take a breath. If you're dealing with someone who is a bouncer and who doesn't have the answers, they don't have the answers. It's not their fault. They're having probably a long night, and you've got a group of people, and you don't have the answer they want, so they've come at you. So it's just about all taking a breath. It's not this guy's fault, right? That the place he works doesn't have any access. Is there any alternatives? No. Would you be willing to carry me in? No. Can I talk to someone else so that I can just inform them about what they could do to kind of make it a more inclusive space for everybody? And then you move on, and you might go to another bar instead. It's not the bar you wanted to go to, but unfortunately, that's life.
How do you go about living your best life and encouraging others to do so? Like, what does that mean?
For me, growing up, I didn't know anyone else like me. Not really, And I go down to the track where I train, and we got a lot of new young talent coming in. And I think you guys are so lucky because you get to race with David Weir, and you get to see all these like older, independent people living their life. Growing up, I didn't have that. So I think, if I met me as a younger person, I think the younger me would be quite impressed. I live my own life. I'm a Paralympian now. I've got tattoos. I think my younger self would think I was pretty cool. And I think that living your best life is just about taking one day at a time. Not every day is going to be a good day. You're going to get pains in your legs. It might be snowing and it might be hard to get outside. But I think my mum gave me the best advice when it comes to this. She said to me, James, you're not special. And I went, what do you mean I'm not special? Of course I'm special. No, you're not special. No one's special. Everyone goes through challenges. Everyone goes through strife. Okay, I've had my moment now. And I usually when I have a bad day, I say to myself, I've got today to be upset about it, but tomorrow I've got to move on. And my dad, who is very much into his wildlife and his David Attenborough stuff and all things nature documentaries, he said to me, James, did you know that sharks only move in one direction? Only ever move forward. They never move backwards, because if they move in a different direction, that means they're going to die. So take that metaphor for a second and really run with it. Be that shark. Always move forward, never back. Because if you dwell on what's not right, you're not looking at what is good. You're not looking at that bigger picture. You could dwell on this little thing like, oh, the ramp's not working. And yeah, that's a frustration for me. It's a frustration for most disabled people, but that's the thing. It happens to all disabled people. It's not just you. You are not special.
And that's a beautiful sentiment and message to end this wonderful interview with you. We can't thank you enough. So much food for thought. But before we do wrap up, we have a little bit of a tradition going on, and we would love for you to ask a question, any question that we can give to our next guest, given that we do not know who that might be.
Oh, sure. Have you had any crazy stories regarding your disability?
Oh, wow. That
Yeah.
was okay. Yeah, that's a heavy one. I was gonna be thinking, what's your favourite ice cream? But hey, let's just deep dive right into there. James, from both Sophie and I, thank you ever so much. I didn't really like this shark analogy because I'm petrified of sharks, but I understood what you were trying to say there. Keep doing what you're doing. You're an absolute role model. You're incredible, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for your time. Absolute pleasure.
Okay, so we're coming to the end of the episode, but before we go, we have one more guest lined up.
I feel like we need a drum roll here. Of course, it is time for Car Chat with Matt.
Hello. Hi guys, how are we doing?
Good, thank you.
Good.
Very well.
Just to introduce this bit, each episode we end by asking our in-house expert, Matt Lissamore, to enlighten us about all things cars. So So, welcome back, Matt. What have you got to tell us today?
Today we're going to have a little chat about hybrid cars. They're very useful in that they can save you fuel, which saves you money, and you can spend it on far more interesting things than trips to the petrol station. But they are quite complicated. There's a few different types, and traditionally the industry has done quite a bad job of explaining what they are, and it's not always obvious. So I thought I'd try and explain what the different types of hybrid car are in a way that's easy for everyone to sort of understand, and then we can sort of from there see what car would suit what type of person and what car you get the most benefit from. So shall I jump straight in?
Yes. Well, before you do, actually, because this is really, really interesting, because I, of course, I'm a car, expert. Of course I am. Not. But I was under the impression that a hybrid was essentially electric, and you kind of had that small finite window of being able to use like for 60 miles, and then you had to go and charge it somewhere. And my mum, God bless her, my mum's German with this Lancashire twang accent, so you can imagine when she goes off on one, it's just like a comedy sketch. She's like, I'm not going to get one of those hybrid cars, all irate. And I think a lot of people are very, very much in the same boat. They are terrified that, oh my goodness, if we are not going to charge this car and we get stuck on the M6, what do we do? But that is not the case, is it, Matt?
Not entirely, no. So here we go, right? There are hybrids that you can plug in, but you don't have to. But you wouldn't be getting the major benefit from them if you didn't. So ultimately, a hybrid car is effectively just a car with like a petrol or diesel engine, and it gets some help from a battery and an electric motor. The difference between the different types of hybrid is just effectively about how big that battery is and how far you can drive on electric.
It's always about size, isn't it?
That it is. So there's, of the three types of hybrid, I think the one you're sort of referring to, or when we talk about plugging in, is the plug-in hybrid. So if you imagine them on a scale, that's at the furthest end, that's like the most hybrid of the three hybrids, if you will. So it's got the biggest battery. So what that means is if you can plug in, ideally you'd want to plug it in at home, otherwise it wouldn't be very convenient for you.
Is that the creme de la creme?
Yeah. Let's say that. And so with a plug-in hybrid, you could go. It obviously varies by model, but in theory, you could go around 30 miles on one charge, just purely on electric, without the petrol engine kicking in at all.
That doesn't sound very far.
It's not very far, but if you think of how most people use a car, most journeys in the UK are under 20 miles. Most people do less than 20 miles a day. So if you think of it that way, you've got battery power to drive you everywhere for you to sort of pop into the shops or
get
doing
your
the
egg
school
McMuffin,
run. Exactly,
McDonald's on a on a
the drive-through
Sunday.
Run. When you're hungover, you want to go to the drive-through.
Absolutely, we've all been there.
Exactly. So you've got the battery power to take you to short journeys, and the benefit of that is if you charge at home, it's going to be cheaper to drive on battery power than it is to put petrol in your car. But if you do want to go on a long journey, you've got that petrol engine to sort of take you the rest of the way. So for all intents and purposes, the petrol engine works like an ordinary car. You just take it to the station, fill it with petrol, and you can drive 300-400 miles or whatever.
I feel like I've just had a light bulb moment, actually. And I guess this is why we bring you in, because you are here to make things a bit clearer. But were you under the same illusion about hybrid? I think they hyped it up, didn't they? And they're like, it's the new way. And where I live in central London, we have a lot of the plug-in points, and I'm always like cursing at them because they always get in the way of me, in my power wheelchair, and I'm, kind of like, you darn cars and your pumps, So yeah, that's really interesting, and that makes so much more ergonomic sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because like you said, people do, on the whole, do shorter trips.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think people do get hung up a lot on range numbers, especially with, I'm not going to delve into electric cars now, but it's one of the things people worry about with fully electric cars that don't have any sort of engine, is you worry about the range. But in reality, something like, I think it's over 99% of journeys are under 100 miles in the UK at least. So yeah, you've got that's plug-in hybrid is kind of the most hybrid, but for obviously a lot of people, you either can't plug in at home or you just simply are unable to for various reasons. It's not always easy to plug those cars in. The chargers can be quite heavy and it can be quite fiddly and cumbersome. So if you can't plug in, there's two other types of hybrids that you don't need to plug in at all. So we'll go to the complete opposite end of the scale now. We've got mild hybrid. So that's your kind of entry level. I think it's been unnecessarily confusing to actually call that a hybrid because it's actually very different to the other two. There's not actually that much electrical assistance going on. Really, it's just a petrol car. And all it really does is when you're rolling up to the traffic lights or a roundabout, for example, the engine just turns off. And then the energy that the car recovers while you're slowing down is just used to start the engine up again and give you a little bit of assistance as you're pulling away. And that's kind of all it does. There's not much more to it. You can't drive on electric power alone in a mild hybrid. It is just there literally to try and keep the engine off for longer periods to save a bit of fuel and just help the engine get going again.
And that's going to make that so much easier and cost effective as well.
And for the environment.
Yeah, exactly. And and anything that saves you fuel saves you money as well. Yeah, and as you said, the environment, less fuel, fewer emissions. Yeah. Exactly. So there's that. So I guess that brings us to the middle, the regular hybrid. So this was like the original hybrid, which is still the kind of middle ground. This was the what sort of started it all. They're often referred to now as self-charging hybrids. So if you see that,
of course they are,
banded around, they call them self-charging, which kind of differentiates it a bit from plug-in or mild. So you don't have to plug in a self-charging hybrid, but it has got a bigger battery and a bigger motor than the mild hybrid. So what that means is when you're slowing down, again, sort of similar principle to the mild hybrid, when you're slowing down and coming to traffic lights or a roundabout or whatever, instead of that energy being wasted, it's put back into the battery. So it charges up. So whenever you're slowing down, that battery charges itself with energy that would normally be wasted as, say, heat from the brakes and that kind of thing. And what it can then do is, if you're driving at slow speed, say around a car park, or if you're cruising at 30...
I was going to say cruising.
Just cruising. There you go.
Down the highway.
It's exactly that. If you're cruising, it can often be done just on the battery power alone. And we're not talking far. You can't drive, say, more than a mile or two on electric alone. But generally, it's not really there to drive long distances on electric. It's more that the car just manages it itself and switches between the two, and it just does it in the way that's going to save you the most fuel. So there's other benefits to them as well, actually. The benefit of having an electric motor is they're very good at getting you off the line. So if you need to nip into a gap in town or a busy roundabout, the sort of electric motor in a hybrid and again a plug-in hybrid, they just sort of give you a little boost off the line. So they're quite good if you do a lot of town driving and nip into town.
What if you're going into central London? Does the hybrid, do you have to pay congestion charge on a hybrid?
You do have to pay congestion charge on a hybrid. It's fully electrics are free. Although I'd have to check that. I've got a feeling they might even be nipping that in the bud now.
I have another question as well.
Yeah, go ahead.
With the whole 2030 legislation coming up, where no more petrol cars will be sold.
Yes.
Can you still buy hybrids, or will it only be?
So the current plan is no to self-charging hybrids and mild hybrids, but in theory, yes to plug-in hybrids. But I believe that's only for an additional 5 years. So this is obviously changing sort of all the time. But my understanding is the current plan is 2030, no more regular petrol, diesel or regular hybrids. And then plug-in hybrids will remain until 2035. And then at that point, it's just electric.
Really interesting.
I want to get down to the most important section of today's episodes. I want to know what rubbish I can buy to put in my car to make me feel better about myself. So, it is gadget time.
Gadget of the week.
What have we found this week?
Okay. All right. This is a slightly unusual one that doesn't sound super exciting on the face of it, but I'm a bit of a clean freak with my car. I like my car to be clean, and my partner does not. So we share a car, and whenever I get in it, there's either like jam on the steering wheel or croissant crumbs in the cup holders and that kind of thing. So one of my favourite things is there's this putty that you can buy.
What, like when you were a kid, like the stuff you throw at walls?
Pretty much, It's that kind. I mean, I think it's still really popular with kids. Sophie, you have children of an age that would play with toys.
Putty, anything.
I think slime seems to be super popular. Yeah. So it's effectively this kind of slime putty kind of thing, but it's basically fantastic for just cleaning all the sort of nooks and crannies and crevices in your car, and you basically just kind of roll it around and it picks up all the crumbs.
But then what do? You throw it away afterwards? Can you reuse it?
Yeah, you can. It seems to go on for quite a while. I put it back in its little tub, but it seems to be fine.
Oh, that's been really helpful, Matt. I feel like I've learned so
much. Good, I'm glad.
And that's it for this episode of the Motability Lifestyle Pod. It has indeed been fun. Thanks to our guests, James Freeman and Matt Lissamore. Thanks to our producer, Yolene Goffin at Rethink Audio, and to our editorial assistant, Lucy Rhodes at Wonderly.
We hope you like this episode, and if you do, tell all your friends and please leave us a review. And if you want to see some behind the scenes content, be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok, or if you want to watch the full video, please watch it on YouTube. These can all be found at Motability_lifestyle_mag. Finally, if you want more information about the Motability scheme, go to motability.co.uk, or if you want to learn more about Motability the charity, visit motability.org.uk. And that's it. I'm Sophie Marie Odden.
I'm Samantha Rank. See you in 2 weeks.
Bye.